to give everyone a chance to jump on, and then we'll get going. Alrighty. Okie dokie, we will make a bit of a start. So thank you again, everyone, for joining today's session. As I say, my name's James Mathias, and today I'm going to be taking you through PainChek Universal. So to get us going, you may already be familiar with PainChek as a pain assessment tool. So PainChek, we've been around, well, for a number of years now, originally out of quite a bit of research that was conducted over at Curtin University in Western Australia. And then as a company producing a tool, we've been around since about 2017 with the validated PainChek pain assessment tool. So our original tool that was developed, as I say, out of Curtin, is what was termed the PainChek pain assessment scale. So PainChek as a pain assessment scale is an objective and consistent tool for use by carers on those who they care for who cannot self-report their pain. So that could range from people who are totally non-verbal through to people who just have, some difficulties communicating. Maybe they are unable to effectively articulate their own pain, or maybe their self-report doesn't align with an observable pain condition. So, for example, someone who self-reports that they're just fine, or we can see them, clearly in quite a bit of pain. Often quite a common scenario, particularly with that cohort that is currently living in residential aged care. So the PainChek pain assessment tool, to give you a little bit more information about it. So PainChek, as you can see, I've got quite a few dot points on the screen, but don't worry too much. So PainChek is an evolution of historical pain assessment tools, such as the Abbey Pain Scale. PainAd also quite commonly used. So working with the team over at Curtin and other industry players, people like Jennifer Abbey, who of course developed the Abbey Pain Scale, we're happy and proud to say that PainChek is an evolution of those tools. And we evolve those tools in a couple of key ways. So one of the big items that's going to be a takeaway around the PainChek pain assessment framework is, of course, as I've mentioned already, consistency, accuracy in the assessment of pain. Historical tools like the Abbey, and I imagine most of you are familiar with the Abbey Pain Scale, but most tools like that ask the assessor to give responses based on a relatively small number of indicators and give their personal opinion with regards to severity or frequency of indicators of pain. And you can see the Abbey Pain Scale, just a little screenshot thereof on the right-hand side of the screen there, looking across those different domains and asking for those different severity ratings. So asking for the personal opinion of an assessor is always going to be a little bit fraught. The Abbey and other tools can be very accurate when used correctly. However, the skill and experience required to use those tools effectively is often something that needs to be developed over an extended period of time and can be impacted by the biases and preconceptions of the person doing the assessment, not to mention what they simply think of what they're observing. So, that being said, PainChek is different in a number of ways as an assessment tool for those who cannot self-report. Of course, firstly, and immediately obvious from what's on screen, I imagine there, PainChek is a digital tool. So PainChek is a medical device, but fundamentally we're an app that lives on a smart device. And this lets us leverage modern technology to go along with that modern redeveloped pain assessment framework. So our very first domain is assessment of the face using an artificial intelligence or an AI tool. So as I was mentioning, in terms of objectivity, no matter who's conducting that assessment, we're going to be getting a consistent and objective measure of the face because, well, it's being mediated by an artificial intelligence system. Beyond that, PainChek takes a much broader look at different potential indicators of pain. And we'll be looking at all of these slightly later in today's session when we go through a live demo of the PainChek tool. As a digital tool, we can also integrate directly with your care management and other clinical systems. So with partners like iCare, Autumn Care, Manad, Lee Care, really person-centered software. I'm going to try to list them all. I don't want to leave anyone out, but all of the major providers in Australia, we have the opportunity to tie directly into the systems you use to avoid any double handling of information, and of course, to make sure that your resident information is available in PainChek when you need it. That being said, we're here today to talk about not just the PainChek assessment tool itself, but the PainChek Universal solution. The PainChek tool gives a voice to people who can't reliably verbalize their pain using artificial intelligence and a modern redesigned pain assessment framework. For those, however, who can self-report their pain, we're able to use a numerical rating scale and document their pain scores. So your process, no matter who you're assessing, is going to be the same. Open the PainChek app, select your resident, and assess or document the self-report of that resident. This then gets underscored for those who fluctuate in terms of cognitive state. Some of your residents are always going to require an observational assessment due to a long-standing cognitive impairment. Some may require care just for purely physical reasons and are cognitively sound. They'll always be able to self-report. But for many of your residents, conditions are going to change and fluctuate day to day, or sometimes even hour to hour in the case of sundowning, for example. In those scenarios, with the PainChek tool, you're able to make the decision. What is the best way to assess this resident's pain? And you can do that at the point of care. So there's no confusion between processes or places to go. Finally, because we can gather that information across all of your residents, regardless of their cognitive state, we can then tie in to our system, PainChek Analytics, and provide detailed real-time reporting on the assessment activity and assessment outcomes across all of your residents. Once again, leveraging the digital nature of the tool and giving you the opportunity to review both things as simple as pain charts and pain records, but also trend analyses and detailed views on how your staff are performing and key indicators of pain for your residents based, once again, on the evidence we're able to gather. So that's a lot of chit chat from me so far. And I think I can tell you about this all day, but I think it's more fun and more valuable for me to just show everyone the PainChek Universal tool. So that's what I'm going to be doing now. Just be one moment and I'll give you all a look. And here, we should be going. Just be one moment. Sorry, everyone. Okie dokie. So you should now all be able to see the PainChek tool. So just my phone on screen there. And we're going to be walking through the PainChek Universal tool on device. I'm using an iPhone today, but we can use any style of device, whether it's iOS or Android, an iPad, an Android tablet, anything like that. I'm just on the login screen of the PainChek tool at the moment. In general, we would use a full username and password to sign in. However, we know that can be a little bit time-consuming on the floor. So after the first login, your users are able to select their name from a list, enter a quick 4-digit PIN, and be logged straight into the PainChek application. we can see immediately on our dashboard residents who we can assess. So in the case of integration, these would be brought in directly from your care management system. And if you're using PainChek as a standalone tool, we can assist you with loading those in the first time, after which it takes about 30 seconds or less to add a new resident into the system. So down the bottom, we can see a couple of different options there in terms of support details for an online user guide and access directly to the PainChek support team. We can see our full resident list. For me, in my demo environment, I've only got a handful of people here, but here you'd see your whole resident population. And of course, I can add a new resident if I want to. I won't do so now, but as you can see, it's quick and straightforward. So I'm going to go ahead and select a resident. We can conduct a couple of assessments to show you how the tool works. So I'm going to select Fran here. She's going to be our example resident today. So we can see Fran's profile picture, her name, date of birth, age, and sex. We'd also be able to see things like room numbers or nicknames were these loaded into the system. Below that, we can see Fran's pain assessment record. Before we talk more about this, let's actually conduct a couple of pain assessments and see them go into the system. So I'm going to click on Assess Pain down the bottom of the screen. The first question we get is, well, what type of assessment are we going to conduct today? Are we going to use the PainChek pain assessment tool for people who cannot reliably self-report their pain? Or are we going to use a numerical rating scale for someone who can reliably self-report? So like I mentioned earlier, we're making this decision right there at the point of care, immediately before we actually assess this resident. So regardless of how they're fluctuating throughout the day, we can look and see and make that decision. So we'll go ahead and select the PainChek pain assessment to start off with, so our observational framework. We press next, and we get a couple of questions to start off. Firstly, with regards to the resident's activity status. So is our resident at rest? That is, are they comfortably sitting or laying down? Or are they post-movement? Have they been up, getting around, going through their ADLs, dressing and undressing, washing and drying, toileting, transferring, anything like that? If someone's experiencing pain at rest, this is chronic pain that someone's living with day to day. Incidentally, someone who with a cognitive impairment who experiences pain at rest is significantly more likely to experience episodes of acute delirium compared to someone with a cognitive impairment who does not experience chronic pain. I think the exact statistic is 329% more likely to experience acute deliriums. Below that, post-movement, of course, moving around is going to exacerbate any issues and cause nociception as the body moves, the limbs and joints move. So these are typically peaks of pain that someone's dealing with. We, of course, want to understand what pain is like for people in either condition. So we've selected an activity status, let's say post-movement today. And below that, we have a question. What type of facial analysis are we going to be performing? So I mentioned earlier in the session that a key component of a PainChek pain assessment is the use of an AI system and the camera in your smart device to assess the pain of to assess the presence or absence of different facial features indicative of pain in your resident. So in general, we're always going to use the camera and the AI system. That's a video analysis. We also want to have the option to conduct this manually if we have to. Some scenarios where we might have to do it manually are things like, it could be as simple as the lights are switched off. It's late in the evening. If we switch on the light, we're going to disturb that resident, cause behaviors, make everyone's life harder, theirs and ours. So we'll want to observe manually. Maybe a resident's being aggressive. We want to observe and then step away safely. But in general, as I say, we're always going to try to use that video analysis where we can. So I'm going to give you a look at what that is like now. So when I press next, it's going to open up the camera on my device. And I'm going to turn to my lovely assistant, our head of sales for Australia and New Zealand, David Alsop, and he's going to do his best pain face for us. We're going to use the AI system in the tool to assess whether any of 9 different facial features that are indicative of pain are present. After that, we'll have a little more of a conversation about those different facial features before moving on to the rest of the assessment. So I'm going to press next now. There we go. And Hello, Dave. So the screen's gone clear, the camera's found his face, and 3, 2, here we go. Great, thank you, Dave. So we've now conducted a 3-second facial analysis. Thank you again, Dave, for your impressive performance there. Managing to successfully emulate, we can see 5 of 9 possible facial expressions that are indicative of pain. So because the AI system has identified these facial features, we've automatically documented them in the assessment, and I can no longer edit these, no matter where I tap. That's part of our objectivity coming in. We know through the studies that have been conducted that that AI system is valid, accurate, and consistent. So we're going to go with that outcome. Were this a manual facial analysis, it would be up to me as the assessor to identify which of these facial features were present. At all times and throughout all domains, I can tap on these little information bubbles throughout the PainChek app to give a detailed definition of exactly what we're looking for. Of course, this is also covered in depth in both our online and face-to-face training. So these 9 facial features we know are common across all humans, whether regardless of age, gender, cultural background, education, any of the factors that you normally think about there. But for people like us, we're cognitively intact. We learned when we were little kids how to manage our external responses to pain, including managing what appears on our face. Most of that as adults, we do totally unconsciously, but we can sort of play it up or play it down if we want to. However, for someone with a cognitive impairment, the ability to manage the externality of pain is significantly reduced, or in some cases, totally lost, which means our AI system is able to look at the face and determine the presence or absence of those pain indicators. So we've completed our facial assessment. We're now going to move on through 5 additional domains to get a rounded and complete view of your resident's condition. So I'll swipe across now to the voice. As we go through our remaining domains, I'm not going to read through all in detail. You can see them there on screen, and I will refer you at the end to some resources on our website if you'd like to take a look in more detail or just have a chat with us. So the voice domain, you can see here some examples of different indicators of pain associated with vocalizations, such as, say, groaning, screaming, sighing, to select a couple of examples. I, as an assessor at the point of care, have observed these indicators present. I'm not being asked, are they severe? Are they frequent? I'm just being asked presence or absence, yes or no, a binary choice there. So I've made my selection as to which indicators are present. And once again, if I need more information, I can always get a definition of exactly what we're looking for. Then I've completed this domain. I swipe through to the next, the movement. So looking at the resident's body and how it's moving. So things like restlessness, guarding or touching a body part, moving away, pacing or wandering down the bottom there are also particularly highlighted. So many of the indicators that PainChek looks at, they are valid, legitimate, and often quite common indicators of pain, but many items like pacing and wandering are very common day to day and can be written off by your team as just habits or BPSD and not immediately associated with pain. So we do love that PainChek can be an educative experience for your staff, as well as a means of effectively assessing pain. So we've completed the movement domain. We'll swipe through now to the resident's behavior. So these could be things like physical aggression or very commonly confusion or distress, particularly in that cohort with more advanced cognitive impairments. We can also make notes at any point throughout our assessment. These will all be saved away with the assessment at the end. We'll now swipe through to the activity. So in this domain, we're looking at the last 5 to 7 days of that resident's life. Looking at things like resisting care. Has the resident been resisting care at any point in that last 5 to 7 days? Have their sleep cycles changed? As a couple of examples. Finally, we look at the body domain. So these are some pretty straightforward clinical indicators. Things like, is the resident pale or flushed? Are they breathing rapidly? And very commonly, do they have any painful medical conditions or painful injuries? So painful injuries could be fractures, bruises, skin tears, anything like that. While painful medical conditions could be anything from osteoarthritis and osteoporosis through, I'm sure anyone on this session can think of 50 examples off the top of their head. We've now completed our assessment. So we've made any notes that we want to, we've marked all the indicators that are present. We then hit Display Summary. We can then see a quick summary of each of the domains that we've been through, what we scored in those domains, and most importantly, down the bottom, we can see our overall pain score. In this case, in our mock assessment, we've scored 20, and that's 20 out of a possible 42. This, of course, equates to a severe pain rating under the PainChek scale. For your reference, a score of 0 to 6 is classified as no pain, 7 to 11 is mild pain, 12 to 15 is moderate pain, and as you can see, 16 or higher is severe pain. People are often used to working with a 0 to 10 or a 1 to 10 scale, so we always ensure wherever that score is present, we also include that pain rating, so there's never any confusion there. Now that we've completed our assessment, we're happy with it, we're going to go ahead and press Save. By saving our assessment, we have added it to our pain record, and you can now probably see it at the top of our record there. We've digitally signed it based on the user who's logged in at the time. And of course, we've triggered a sync with the PainChek backend, with the PainChek analytics system, and if you have integration present, with your care management system. So that information is now flowing not just to our reporting, but directly into your records. So that was the PainChek Pain Assessment Scale. We'll also now take a look at the PainChek Numerical Rating Scale. So if someone can self-report, we're going to go ahead, assess pain, and select that NRS. So let's press Next now, and it's nice and straightforward. So of course, we still select our activity status, whether at rest or post-movement. And below that, we have a straightforward prompt question for your resident. Where would you place your pain on a scale of 0 to 10, where 0 is no pain and 10 is the worst possible pain? We listen to what the resident has to say, and we document their numerical response on this slider. Once we've selected a number, the PainChek app also converts that into an equivalent pain rating. So the numbers that are used here, 0 to 10, obviously not apples to apples with 0 to 42, but as a validated NRS, we do have those ratings available, and they can then line up and be compared with what is in the PainChek Pain Assessment Scale. Cool. We finished our documenting of self-report. We'll go ahead and save that. Once again, digitally signed, documented, and added to your residents' records here. So within the app, we can take a look, obviously, at that record in a list format. We can tap on any of these to go back and investigate the details, see anything there, any notes we've made. And we can, of course, see pain charts as well. So right now for Fran, we're looking at her last 4 weeks. You can see we can select different durations there to look at on our chart. 7 days, significantly fewer assessments over the last week for Fran. And we can see up top her numerical rating scale outcomes broken into at rest or post movement, the 2 colored lines there. And we can see her PainChek pain assessments. So once again, looking at 7 days here or the last week. Pretty up and down for poor Fran, though hopefully your residents in the real world have somewhat smoother experiences. So that was a quick end-to-end of the PainChek application, including the PainChek Pain Assessment Scale and the Numerical Rating Scale. This allows us to capture pain assessment information across all of your residents, regardless of their cognitive state and regardless of how frequently it's fluctuating. We can get that observational assessment consistently and objectively through a redesigned framework which leverages modern technology, the AI system, as well as a straightforward yes or no binary checklist as to the presence or absence of different indicators of pain. Beyond that, where someone can self-report, we're able to quickly and easily document that in a central point flowing through into our reporting. Okie dokie. So I'm going to take a quick pause here. And the last thing I'm going to show you today in terms of our systems is, of course, going to be PainChek Analytics. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and bring that up all for you in just a hot moment. So please bear with me while I do that. And then we will take a look. Alrighty. So I'm just going to begin sharing my screen again now. And what you should now be able to see on screen is the dashboard of the PainChek portal. So this is our central portal. So here is where you come to do any administration of users, to review our reporting, and to review the individual pain charts of your residents, as well as the activity that your staff are carrying out. Where integration is present, of course, all assessments saved here in the PainChek portal will also flow through directly to your system. So what you're looking at now, as I mentioned, is the dashboard. So we can see here real-time reporting about the assessments conducted in your organization. We can look at a whole organization level, at an individual facility, or we can look at individual residents to see how things are going for them. Right now, we're looking at a whole organization. We've got it set to the last 14 days. We can look at 3 months, 12 months, anything up to 5 years. Let's say 3 months for today. So up top, we can see some pretty straightforward stats. Things like how many active users are present, how many residents can be assessed, and how many assessments have been conducted during that reporting period, in this case, the last 3 months. Below that, we can see a breakdown. We can see a breakdown of the different proportions of outcomes from our pain assessments, were they severe, moderate, mild, or no pain identified. I will just flag that in the real world, if we saw a facility with this much severe or moderate pain, we would probably be a little bit concerned. So in the real world, no pain is in fact our most commonly found outcome, and frankly, pretty happy with that being the case. We can see how many residents are being assessed, in this case, week to week over that duration. We can see below how many assessments are actually being conducted in that period. On the right hand here, assessments per assessed resident history. I'm quite a big fan of this particular metric. So this is effectively a measure of follow-up. So to explain a little more, we do of course have information bubbles giving definitions for all of our reports. But what we can see here are things like, during the week of the 11th to 17th of January, for example, this chart shows us that for our demo facility, the average resident, if they received an assessment during that week, they were on average assessed 9 times. So on average, 9 follow-up assessments during that week. Of course, just a couple of weeks later, we can see that trend going down. So on average, during the week of the 25th of January, a resident, if they were assessed, was assessed only 3.5 times. That raises the question for us, why did that change? It might be that we've been working really hard with our doctors, with our allied health team, with our nurses to manage pain. If there's less pain identified, less follow-up is required. That's pretty straightforward. At the same time, it may mean that our team's priorities have shifted, or we've fallen a little bit behind the curve in terms of doing as much assessment as we should be doing to make sure that we're hitting our best practice standards. So something for us as a manager to follow up and determine why, but we can see there that that change has happened. Below that, we can see things like the average PainChek pain score and the average numerical rating score, numerical rating scale response over time, right now looking at a whole population. We can also see breakdowns of those assessment proportions week to week and the most common pain behaviors or pain indicators that come up. These are a little more interesting, I think, looking at an individual resident. So why don't we do that? I'm going to select David. This is David, the test resident, not David, our head of sales, who's sitting next to me. When we select an individual resident, we can see all of their stats personally for the last however long, in this case, 3 months. So how many times David has been assessed during that period, his proportional breakdown, his assessment history week to week, his trending pain score over time. So it looks like he was in borderline severe pain back at the tail end of January, and that's improved over time, but with a recent spike interrupting that trend. Down the bottom here, this pain behavior profile, I'll draw particular attention to. So I really like this from a perspective of providing person-centered care. So because a PainChek assessment does gather information on all of those discrete indicators of pain, we can look at these and say, you know what, for David personally, for example, about 68% of the time when we assessed his pain, he was confused. About 65% of the time, he was making noisy pain sounds. About 58% of the time, he was guarding or touching a body part. So these are evidence-based, personalized red flags for pain for David. So we can then flow these through into, say, our care planning, how we approach pain assessment for that resident, what's going to trigger us to assess pain in that resident. So no doubt you already know how your residents behave when they are in pain, but having the evidence base to go with it laid out in black and white, I'm really excited by the possibility there for supporting that, again, person-centered care. So that's a quick look at the PainChek dashboard. In addition to this real-time reporting, we can also provide you with customizable month-to-month reporting, things like leaderboards for your staff, for your residents, even things like, even getting quite granular, looking at things like, on average, what time of day was an assessment conducted? Were they clustered around handover meetings, or were they evenly spread throughout the day? Just different pieces of information that we can pull, having that wealth of data there. And our account managers can work with you to find the information that you need and present that back. So before we leave the PainChek portal, we'll just take a look at a few other things that we can do here as administrators. So we can look at individual residents here. David, nice and conveniently up top, being the last person we updated. So we can take a look at him and we can see his individual pain chart. Of course, if you are integrated with a care management system, you'll also be able to see it there. But from the PainChek system, we can see quick and easily. We can jump into any of these assessments and see all of the details, including the comments. It looks like in this particular assessment, this was post-fall, and he was having an issue with his right shoulder, as documented by the assessor. We can even go ahead and print this pain chart if we choose to. So not quite as attractive as it is on screen, but quick and easy if we need to run something off. Beyond looking at individual residents, we can look from a whole facility perspective. So we've got a few facilities in here. We'll just select one of them. And we can see all of the assessments that have been conducted for that facility. So I know a lot of our clients use this at things like handover meetings to quickly review all of the activity in the facility that shift and what needs to be done or followed up in the subsequent shift. And you can probably notice here, looks like David is all of our favorites here at PainChek as an example resident. So one last thing I'll show you is, of course, from a user perspective. So creating a user, managing your users, all nice, quick, and easy, just like we looked at when we were creating a new resident directly from the PainChek interface. Of course, residents will come across from your care management system where integration is present. So we can say create a new user, and it's as simple as selecting their level of permissions, their name, email address, and what facilities they have access to. I'll throw this one away for now, as we've got, well, all of my colleagues here at PainChek here in the system. So I'm going to pick on David as he's sitting next to me here, and I can take a look at all of the assessments David has conducted, who he's assessed, when he assessed them, the type of assessment, whether it was self-report by the resident or a PainChek observational assessment. Again, I can click through and see the details in any of these if I choose to, but just another way at looking at our data and who's doing what in the facility. I said this was the last thing, but I've actually got one more for you. So just quickly, in terms of security and thinking about your devices. So I've just clicked on installations here, and we can see all of the different devices that PainChek is installed on from our license. So typically our clients use facility-owned devices, but managers or other staff may actually have PainChek installed on their own device. So for a first installation, PainChek cannot be activated even if you have a valid username and password unless you are at a top level of permissions, unless you are an administrator yourself. So all devices get activated by that senior person at your facility. If a device goes walkabouts, or if say a manager wins the lotto, leaves the company, we can of course remotely disable access to PainChek to a given device quickly and easily. If we make a mistake, we can of course reverse that if we have to, but pretty straightforward. And just thought I'd highlight a nice, easy security feature there so that you can rest assured that all of your data is being handled appropriately. Of course, PainChek does comply or exceed the requirements set out by all legislation in the Privacy and the Aged Care Acts. So we're more than happy to provide you details on that if you have any questions there. Okie dokie. That's pretty well it from me, walking through the PainChek application, the PainChek portal, covering off the PainChek assessment, which is objective, AI-driven, as well as NRS documentation and how they flow through into PainChek analytics. So at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and see if we've got any questions from today's session. David, did we have any questions through there?
We do. Thank you, James, for that informative presentation, and thanks for all the attendees. We've got 3 or 4 really poignant questions, so thank you for putting those forward. The first one, quite simply, James, is how does the PainChek government grant work?
Oh, of course, and thank you for raising that, David. So, of course, PainChek is currently available to any Australian provider, more or less free of cost. So what the federal government is funding is 12 months of use of PainChek for you, totally paid for. What do you get? Unlimited use of PainChek, as many assessments as you like, as many users, as many devices. You get training, both face-to-face and online training, all technical support, clinical support, access to all of our online support resources, and of course, from our perspective, integration if relevant. We, of course, as I mentioned earlier, do integrate with all of the major care management system providers in Australia. But if you're running a custom system, we can also support integration via our open API. So more than happy to have a chat on that. So that 12-month period kicks off from whenever you actually go live with PainChek. However, I will just flag that sign up is currently coming to an end. So we are unable to accept any further signups anytime after the end of May of this year. So if you would like to take up that federal funding and give PainChek Universal a go for free, as I say, please do get in touch. So the place to get in touch with us, and I'll just actually show you, the website is painchek.com/free. And it does just look like this. So if you're coming, if you just jump on the PainChek website, you can, as I say, go to painchek.com/free. There's also a pop-up on the homepage that you may see. All you've got to do is fill out a couple of your details, your name, email, contact, the company you work for, and get in touch with us there. We'll then reach out to you to take you through all the details of the grant in terms of how to sign up, which is nice and straightforward. We do all the dealing with the department, getting that funding allocated to you. So no onerous application forms for funding. It's all on PainChek's side. And we can get you using PainChek ASAP, as I say, at no cost to yourselves for a 12-month period.
Fantastic. Thanks, James. And a couple of really good poignant questions have come through while you're speaking about that regarding, I think you touched on integration quickly. Yep. Simple question, how does it work? Was a question from one of the attendees.
Sure thing. So in terms of how PainChek integration works, I'm not going to pretend to be a member of our IT team, but to give you a quick overview. So all of the assessment information, so all the assessments you conduct using the PainChek application flow through into the PainChek portal and PainChek Analytics, as we looked at today. That information then goes through an API. I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure what API stands for. It's very technical, I'm sure, but it flows through securely into the systems of your care management system provider. That information is then reflected in the risk charts, in the pain records, depending on what system you're using of that individual resident. And that includes all of the information from the assessment, the overall score, the different indicators that are selected there. On the flip side, of course, the PainChek app, when we looked at it, we could see that resident list present. So that resident list is populated directly from your care management system. That flows through from your care management system provider into PainChek portal and of course into the PainChek application itself. So you never have to enter that resident's name or depart that resident when they leave the facility in multiple places. Your care management system is your source of truth for your resident list.
Fantastic. Thanks, James. Just a quick one off the feedback from the government grant trial you spoke of was, what are they committing to? What am I committing to as the actual verbiage? How long am I locked in for after the grant? If so, and how much is it?
Sure. No,
so that's a loaded question.
That's a lot. Okay, so in short, that 12-month grant period doesn't have any additional commitments at the end. So if you want to sign up for PainChek, you can use it for that 12 months for free. And then if it's not for you, simply opt out with no commitments, no obligations, and importantly, no fees. That being said, whenever we do sign you up, we do like to give you a quote for your second year. If you would like to, and we very much hope you will continue using PainChek, having seen the value in the tool. So we do provide that quote. That does depend on your size as an organization. But if you want to reach out to us, we can provide you the nitty-gritty of the details.
Fantastic. Thanks, James. And last question. So if there's any other questions, attendees, fire them off right now. We've got one more question for you, James. Who is using PainChek currently is the question.
Right, fair enough. So we do refer to the government grant, the government trial period. So just to rest assured, it is a trial more like a Netflix trial as opposed to a clinical trial. All of the clinical validation is well done and put to bed. We are approved both in Australia and around the world as a medical device for the assessment of pain. To get to the point of that question, however, who is actually using PainChek? So we're actually really proud to say that PainChek is the most commonly used software tool in residential aged care in Australia, with over a third of the industry currently either using or in the process of implementing PainChek. So needless to say, you would no doubt be in good company. I assume so.
Fantastic. That's great, James. I don't think we have any more questions, but if so, please populate in the next 20 seconds or so. But thanks for those informative questions, attendees. Appreciate that.
Beauty. Well, look, unless I see anything else come through, thank you so much, everyone, for your attendance today and for letting me speak for quite so long. I really do appreciate it. So like I mentioned, if you would like to know more about PainChek or to get involved in that government grant, please go to painchek.com/free. That's PainChek.com/free. or give us a call. Again, all details there available via the PainChek website. We would love to hear from you and to register you for that federal funding so you can give PainChek a go for 12 months for, as the URL suggests, free. And yeah, once again, really appreciate your time. Have a wonderful rest of the week and hope everyone has a relaxing Easter break this weekend. Alrighty, that'll be us for today. Thanks again all. See you later. Cheers.